Welcome to the Rainbow Man podcast. This is episode 14, if I'm not mistaken. I always forget the numbers, and I'm not even that high up in the count yet. But we are here again today. If you are listening on YouTube or any of the streaming platforms, I would greatly appreciate it if you like the content that I'm providing. Go ahead and subscribe or follow the podcast, leave a rating, share it with your friends. It'd be greatly appreciated. It costs you nothing, and it just helps promote the channel or the podcast. And the more in the community, the better. So go ahead and do that. And I just want to admit that it has been a while since I released a new podcast. I will admit that I recorded one before, and I was talking about a topic which we're going to talk about today, but I just didn't feel very good about it when I recorded it for some reason. Maybe I just felt rushed or whatever it may be, but I just didn't sit right with me when I recorded it. I think maybe my thoughts were just too jumbled or whatever. But fast forward to today, what ended up happening was I recorded this podcast about my feelings about social media, and especially with that's going on and that has been going on. On the podcast, I've talked about it before, and current events, and people are just going crazy on social media in particular. I felt like people were being manipulated. So with that being said, I had saw something about a documentary called The Social Dilemma that it was really good. I believe I saw Sam Harris posted about it. So the other day, I put it on this weekend, and I watched it, and it basically confirmed what I was thinking about, or what my thoughts were on what's going on and why people seem to have lost their effing mind. And it comes down to what I talked about in the Rushed podcast, but just that people are being manipulated and being played. So if you have not watched that documentary, The Social Dilemma, it's on Netflix. I highly suggest it. It is a good and interesting documentary. It'll make you want to delete all your social media. But I don't think that deleting it is a solution. I think people just have to be a little bit smarter about the situation and like what's really going on, which is why I wanted to talk about this. Even though I don't know how many people will listen to this or how many people even care. But I think it's just important. And a lot of times, I just talk about what's on my mind or, what's interesting. And lately this has been on my mind a lot. And it's just on social media myself, I'm not a very active person because I just don't feel like people need to have like a big insight into my life because it's my private life. And I think a lot of people mistake social media for that they should be putting all their opinions and their life out there for everybody to see. Really, my opinion is like, live life. You don't have to share it with everybody. Just live your life. And I understand there's an element of connecting with other people and sharing. And it's not what I mean. I mean, I just, if social media is such a big part of your life, you're probably not living life to the fullest and embracing the moments for what they're worth. I'm just the type of person that instead of taking pictures of stuff personally, I just like to, live in the moment. I understand, capturing and remembering, but like really, why have the distraction of wanting to document it? Just live in the moment, embrace it, So I feel the same thing with social media. People like to portray themselves a certain way and voice their opinions a certain way, and I think that's not really the most important thing. Social media could have a good purpose, connecting with family and keeping people updated what's going on in your life when it comes to, stuff that's just not like super personal, but just to keep people informed. I understand that. But in the grand scheme of things, like, you don't have to air out all your stuff on social media. You don't have to fight with people on social media. And that brings me to, sorry if I have a little bit of a sniffle, but that brings me to the idea of manipulation. Like the documentary went over, I feel like a lot of people don't realize it, but they're being manipulated in many ways. And, I think that that's one of the biggest problems that we see. So disclaimer, I absolutely believe that racism exists. Someone who doesn't acknowledge that racism doesn't exist is completely oblivious to history. Every country and civilization, everywhere in the world has racism in some form. And it's everywhere. It's not only in the US. You can go to Mexico and people with fairer skin are treated differently. They're better. In India, darker people are treated more poorly. So the thing is racism is just something that's innately like human because people look different. So to say that racism isn't real is really ignorant. Now, by me saying that, what I'm acknowledging personally, my beliefs are, is that, is there racist people in the U.S.? Yes. Is the race problem as big as it's being blown up to be? I don't think so. I think that it's being used as a political divisive tool, and people are being manipulated to feel a certain way. And the reality is that, people are just being played by people that don't give a shit and that are making money. My best example of that would be the NFL. The NFL didn't give a shit about Colin Kaepernick, and they cheated him out of being able to play. And now they're turning around and saying that, oh, Black Lives Matters, and it all has to do with money. And that's the sad truth. But my opinion is that there is systems and structures in the U.S. that are systemically racist because of old policy that has yet to be addressed. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that affect people of color. So first we need to address those issues, whether it's, the way that the justice system treats people of color versus others. You're talking about all kinds of things like welfare and all of these things that were passed in government that affect people of color and have put them in a position now where they're stuck. And I think that's where, number one could be like the most change could be had first. And then you have people that are just think in the most old way that are racist, but I don't think that people, if you were to ask me, I think there's a very small percent of people that are actually racist that would just go out and kill a person because of the color of their skin. I think a lot of people are racist inherently by the way they grew up and don't know any better. The easiest example you can use of that is, people out in the country where it's mostly white people are typically tend to be racist just because they don't have the knowledge or exposure or anything like that to, change their mindset. And I think that along with addressing systemic racism in the systems that we have from the early, like 50 years ago and even 60 years ago, more than that, I think that education will go a long way, educating people on the history of our nation, educating people in general. The best solution to a bad idea is a good idea. So racism is a bad idea, and then teaching people a better idea, which is that we're all human beings and we all suffer the same feelings and we all go through ups and downs and we all bleed red blood. Wow. What a revolutionary thing, that we're all just human beings. And ultimately educating people on that, I don't think that racism will ever disappear, because you're always going to have people that just don't ever get exposed, that always just live in a bubble, that always have a closed-minded way of thinking. But, the vast majority, I think, of the population in the U.S. is, not racist, and genuinely are good people that would do the right thing. So I just don't think it's that big of an issue as people are making it out to be, that, like critical race theory and that everybody's racist inherently. And I think one of the biggest issues that people fail to realize is our government has failed us. All the people that are supposed to represent us, the people that are supposed to be the leaders, have failed us. They're the ones that have. The reality of this is that at one point, the people in government, I thought about this the other day, and I was talking to somebody, I forgot who it was, but I told them that my opinion was, back in the 60s when the civil rights movement was happening, my opinion is that the people in government were racist. Most of them, or a lot of them, were racist because they were the sons and daughters of people that were racist. So it's something that they were taught to be racist. So with that being said, I think that over time, it takes a long time to break that spell where, in this day and age, in 2020, how many people do you really think are actually racist? Not a lot, especially as time goes on and races keep mixing. And, it's hard to be racist when everybody's just mixed. I look white, but I'm half Hispanic, and no one would ever know that. So it's hard to be racist against people when everybody's going to be a melting pot anyways. So my point is that it takes a while for these people, we still have people in government that were best example is Joe Biden was one of the big proponents for the crime bill, which was atrocious for the black community. And he still has been in office for all this time. Do I know if he's definitely racist? But that's just a good example. If he was racist and he's still in government, he would still be a racist in office, shaping, the policies that are going on in this country. And I think that's what has happened, was you had people that were in government that were racist, that may have passed bills that, cheated people and, victimized people of color. And, over time, they stayed in office. And then they raised kids that they might be, poisoning their mind with this concept of, treat people different because of the color of their skin. But now it's so far off that I think that it's not really that much of a case. I mean, look at what Congress looks like now and the House of Representatives. I mean, you have so many different people. But I think what's happened now is instead of race being a big problem, now it's just the tribes. You got the Democrats and the Republicans. And the God honest truth is they don't give a shit. The truth is, and I think people are starting to wake up to this, that these politicians really don't mean what they say. Ultimately, at the end of the day, they're just trying to lie to you or convince you that they really care when they don't. And they both are crooked. They both sell out, The Republicans have sold out to oil and, the Middle East and war. The left has sold out to pharmaceuticals and tech and war. The common denominator is they both love war, because guess what? They both make money with war. So I think that the overarching problem is that you have social media that, in that documentary, they talk about it, is basically it just increases the misinformation and animosity because it causes more engagement, and people are misinformed, and people are, riling each other up and then encouraging each other with stupid ideas. And I just think that it's a perfect storm. If you wanted to really manipulate the U.S., it's not very hard for, Russia or China or any other country to, make bots and incite people to freak out or have a rally or have protest or, be manipulated to think that, Joe Biden or Trump is evil or whatever it may be. I'm not saying one or the other. I'm just using it as an example. It's like people don't realize that bots are a thing, and you can look it up that Russia does it, China does it, and all these people, it's because they have something to gain from all this craziness. So with that being said, people need to be mindful about being manipulated. Conversation is okay. Disagreeing with people is okay. But ultimately, we need to be able to talk to people, reason with people, come to a common ground. At the end of the day, we're all people and we all experience the same emotions and the same kind of flows of life. It may look different, but we all have highs and lows, and ultimately we need to learn to talk to people, find a common ground, agree and disagree and learn from each other. And that's the thing is, the reality of the matter is what's going on in politics, I think, is completely stupid because no one has a solution. All they have is their idea that they will die with. But no one's proposing a real solution here. If you would disagree with me, then you're wrong. Maybe there's an answer in the middle, but people don't want to go there. And it's very frustrating because then you create what we have now, just more polarization. I just really think that the party system is completely stupid because they have found a way to manipulate it, to really keep control. Because if someone else comes into the mix of between the R's and D's, then they will unite to make sure that the third party doesn't come into the mix. So it's a really interesting, thing. And with that, they're willing to manipulate however they want. So just be mindful, on social media. What are you saying? You have to use your critical feeling. Just because you feel a certain way doesn't mean that it's right or that it really is reality. You have to be mindful of what you're feeling and why you're feeling that way. It's kind of funny because one of the things I see a lot is, not that I'm saying that it's false, but people are talking about white fragility and all this stuff, and they're saying feeling offended is white fragility and blah blah blah. The thing is if you're feeling easily offended by something, the chances are is you're feeling offended because there might be a reason why, but you have to think about, why are you feeling offended? Maybe the way that you're thinking about things, that's on both sides, is not right. So you have to be careful. Just because you feel offended or you feel like someone's attacking you or, you feel like you're right, that doesn't mean that's the ultimate, conclusion. So just be mindful, people have something to gain from making you feel a certain way or thinking a certain way or informing you a certain way. It's the same reason why if you look at news, you see the two sides, but they don't deviate from that. Trump is bad, Trump is good, Trump is bad, Trump is good. And there's no real facts or real, and even if there is facts, it's, laced with other fluff and misguided stuff. So it's really hard to know what's the truth. And that's, unfortunately, the toughest part of what we live in now is everything is just misdirected, and it all has to do with manipulation. So my biggest thing to say here is just be aware, you have to really think for yourself. You really have to think, how would you want to be treated? Is this reality? Is this what's real? I always revert to, when I feel like feelings are too much, think about nature. Nature is it's beautiful because it's simple. If you're in the woods and you fuck with a bear, the bear will kill you. You don't want to get near a bear. So why would you tempt fate? So that's the biggest thing about nature that I find really interesting is that, there's no respect for color. There's no respect from who you are, what position you have, how much money you have. It doesn't matter. If you make a stupid mistake, it'll cost you your life. And nature is just, are you going to fight or are you going to run? And maybe that's a bad analogy, but really it's the fight or flight. Really what it is, you're either the prey or the predator. And like sometimes it's more about, making smart decisions to not put yourself in a position where the bear will kill you. And what I mean by that is you have to be perceptive. Look at what's going on around you. If you're not paying attention to what's going on and, being perceptive, then you'll run into the bear. And it's the same thing when it comes to being manipulated. People, you're going to hear so many opinions and people saying this and that, and this person needs to be canceled. And it's just, you have to be aware of what's going on. Who's saying it? Why are they saying it? Why do they want to cancel them? Does it seem like something that's real? Like something that is worth canceling somebody? I don't believe in cancel culture because I think people should have a path to redemption. And people are quick to judge. And ultimately, that's why I'm saying you have to be perceptive, is because at the end of the day, that could be you. That could be you that's judged. That could be you that's victimized. And we just have to be aware. We have to think. Think about what we're feeling. Think about the information we're getting and how we want to process that, how we want to go about that. So, yeah, I just see a lot of manipulation and people don't realize it. And, it's especially as time goes on, people are realizing it. People are tired of it. And the thing is, it's not exempt to one side or the other. It doesn't matter who. There's always somebody who's trying to manipulate or change the way we think. Like I said, watch Social Dilemma. It's a great documentary that'll really open your eyes. The only thing that bothers me about the documentary is I'm not a fan of debunking conspiracy stuff because I am a conspiracy person and I have always felt like even though some of it might be bullshit, there's some truth to some of it, And I might have said it before on a different podcast, but, like when you talk about MK Ultra and, all of this stuff, there's some truth to it. And then later on, we find out that it's true, like the aliens thing. And you can't always be dismissive. The lawnmen are here. Great. So you can't always be dismissive and just say that it's not true just because it might be something different. I like to entertain and read about stuff just to open up my mind and see like, hey, this might be true. But, you can piss off if you're telling me that I'm controlled by little green men in my head or some shit like that, But, yeah, so beware. They're trying to manipulate you. But on that note, we'll wrap up this podcast because these lawnmen are killing my vibe. So, thanks for listening. Like I said, if you're listening on YouTube or any of the streaming services, subscribe, comment, like, or leave a review. Let me know what you want me to talk about. I am open to anything at all. Till next time, this is the Ramble Man. See ya.